Adana felt the slap echo more in her empty stomach than across her cheek. At 10, the vibrant world she knew, filled with her mother's laughter and her father's expansive library, had dissolved into the suffocating reality of her Aunt Uche and Uncle Chima's compound in Lagos. Her parents, a respected botanist and an innovative spice merchant, died in a sudden, unexplained road accident, leaving Adana and their modest estate to the care of their greedy relations. Immediately, the expensive private school uniform was replaced by threadbare rags, and the promise of a bright future by the endless drudgery of the compound's kitchen and gardens. She was a housemaid in the home that should have been her sanctuary. "Lazy girl, is this how you wash plates?" Uche would screech, holding up a greasy banga soup bowl before intentionally letting it slip to shatter at Adana's feet, forcing the girl to pick up the shards with trembling hands. Chima, meanwhile, would sell off her father's rare plants one by one, never giving Adana a shilling or even a moment of peace. Food was scraps, gari soaked in water while Uche's own 3 children gorged on jollof rice. Adana, however, noticed something Uche and Chima did not: the discarded peels, the overlooked seeds, and the forgotten fragrance of the local blossoms. Her eyes, still luminous despite the hardship, began to catalog the subtle, complex aromas of the garden, a silent rebellion taking root in her tender heart. 6 years of relentless subservience had honed Adana into a ghost, unseen, unheard, and perpetually malnourished. Now 16, her only solace was the kitchen, a place of torment that paradoxically became her classroom. One sweltering afternoon, Aunt Uche paraded her pampered children for the district head's son, offering a feast of store-bought biscuits while Adana scrubbed the rusty outdoor sink. "Don't touch anything," Uche hissed. "You smell like palm oil and failure." The humiliation was a physical ache. That night, nursing a cut from a broken gourd, Adana decided she would not just escape, she would become the scent of success that burned away failure. Secretly, using the tiny glass vials her father once used for botanical samples, Adana began to distill and blend. She used discarded citrus rinds, crushed mango leaves, and the richly scented resins from the courtyard's forgotten incense tree. Her small, potent concoctions were kept hidden beneath a loose floor tile in the cramped shack she shared with the rats. Her focus was absolute: to capture the rich, complex soul of the Nigerian earth in a bottle. Her signature ingredient, discovered during a desperate foraging trip, was the rare, intoxicating essence of a nocturnal orchid her father had cultivated, an aroma unknown to the commercial world. Her dream wasn't just to be wealthy, but to wield a power that could not be stolen or broken, a power rooted in the very botanical knowledge her family had mocked. At 18, Adana's opportunity arrived, not through her family, but through an ancient, quiet lady, Madame Ngazi, who sold dried herbs at the market. Madame Ngazi was a longtime acquaintance of Adana's late father. She had sampled a tiny vial of Adana's distilled orchid essence and was stunned by its purity and complexity. Weeks later, a package arrived from an anonymous trust fund, securing a 2-year, all-expenses-paid apprenticeship at a prestigious, albeit obscure, perfumery in Grasse, France, the global heart of fragrance. The trust was registered under the cryptic name The Botanist's Legacy. The departure was a delicious scene of chaos. When Uncle Chima discovered Adana was leaving, holding a passport and a valid visa, he seized her worn duffel bag, convinced she was hiding stolen money. Finding only the small glass vials of her precious oils, he threw them against the wall in a rage. "Worthless concoctions! Go and rot in your French gutters!" Adana did not flinch. She simply collected a single, unbroken vial from the floor and tucked it into her pocket. "I will not rot, uncle," she said, her voice steady for the first time. "I will rise, and when I look back, you will see nothing but my shadow." She walked out the gate, leaving behind the dust, the abuse, and the shock of Uche and Chima, who had believed she was their eternal, bound servant. 5 years evaporated like dew in the morning sun. Adana, now 23, was no longer defined by the scars on her knees, but by the indelible signature she left on the world of olfactory art. She was known simply as Ada, the elusive master perfumer whose private blends commanded astronomical prices in Paris and Dubai. Her creations were legendary, complex, intoxicating, and rooted in the rare, unidentifiable notes of the African rainforest. The world knew her name, but none knew the face of the young woman who had scrubbed floors in Lagos. Meanwhile, back in Nigeria, Uche and Chima had spectacularly mismanaged their affairs. Chima's shady investment in a failed import scheme had decimated their savings, and Uche's extravagant spending had mortgaged their dilapidated compound. They were now struggling to maintain a facade of middle-class respectability. Their children, entitled and lazy, contributed nothing to the worsening situation. Their compound, once merely messy, was now genuinely decrepit. Ada read the news of their financial troubles through a private investigator's report. A cold smile touched her lips. The time for escape was over. The time for the meticulous, scent-filled revenge was beginning. She secured a sprawling, ultra-modern property right in the heart of their wealthy district, announcing her return to Lagos, not as Adana, but as Lady Ada, an international heiress of unknown provenance, seeking to reconnect with the authentic African spirit. Lady Ada's arrival in Lagos was a silent, powerful, seismic event. She drove a sleek, obsidian SUV, her face perfectly composed behind oversized sunglasses. Her air an untouchable blend of global sophistication and cool detachment. She didn't seek out her family. She drew them in like moths to a dazzling, fatal flame. Uncle Chima, desperate for any business, heard rumors of the wealthy new European investor who was commissioning a massive cultural event showcasing forgotten African arts. He immediately used his last savings to buy a new suit, hoping to land a contract to supply chairs or perhaps even manage logistics. Aunt Uche, ever the social climber, cornered a contact who knew Lady Ada's assistant, pleading for a meeting to offer her unparalleled local counsel. Uche was granted an audience, not with Lady Ada, but with her formidable chief of staff, who coldly explained that Lady Ada was looking for a respectable local family to host a small, intimate welcome dinner at their home to prove her commitment to Nigerian culture. Uche, blinded by the potential money and social cachet, boasted relentlessly about her grand family estate and secured the commission, completely oblivious to the fact that her new patron was Adana. The first phase of the plan was complete. The spider had invited the fly into her web, eagerly preparing the space for their own spectacular downfall. The night of the dinner was set 2 weeks later. Aunt Uche, scrambling madly to make her crumbling house presentable, commissioned Uncle Chima to oversee the catering, an irony that tasted like ash in his mouth. Lady Ada sent her own chef and staff, but insisted that Chima must supervise the procurement of specific, high-quality local spices and ingredients, giving him an excruciatingly tight, high-pressure deadline. Chima spent his days running around the markets, stressed and terrified of failure, constantly being subtly undermined by Lady Ada's meticulous, unforgiving staff. Uche was unbearable. She boasted to every neighbor about the influential heiress she was hosting, dropping Lady Ada's name like a talisman against their poverty. When Lady Ada finally arrived, Uche's attempts to curry favor were sickly sweet and nauseating. "Lady Ada, darling," she cooed, "you must meet my wonderful, respectable children. They are all university graduates, ready to manage your entire African portfolio." Lady Ada, wearing a bespoke dress and a rare, smoky gold perfume that filled the room with intoxicating mystery, merely offered a thin, polite smile. She watched Uche and Chima, noting the desperation in their eyes, the exhaustion etched on their faces. the very expressions Adana had worn for 8 long years. The scent of their fear was a far more satisfying aroma than any fragrance she had ever created. The moment of truth arrived during the dinner's dessert course. Lady Ada stood to make a toast, her voice a low, clear melody that silenced the room. I want to thank my wonderful hosts, Mr. and Mrs. Chima, for their hospitality. She began, then paused, her eyes locking onto Uche and Chima, who preened proudly. This fragrance I wear tonight, my signature world-famous scent, Adana's Bloom, is special. It is based on the essence of a rare Nigerian orchid, a botanical secret guarded by my late father, the respected botanist. A low murmur swept the room. Uche's face paled as the name Adana hit her. Chima, realizing too late, surged forward, roaring, "The little rat! It's her!" He desperately tried to seize her hand, convinced the secret was in the diamond ring she wore. Lady Ada's security moved swiftly, pinning him down. "You tried to steal my parents' legacy, but you only ever saw a housemaid," Adana declared, slowly removing her sunglasses. Her eyes held the cold, hard memory of a 10-year-old girl. The scandal was the public reveal of Chima's immediate, violent attempt to steal from the acclaimed international figure. The juicy twist? Adana projected images onto the wall, old ledgers showing how Uche had systematically sold off her mother's jewelry, and the final catastrophic transfer of Chima's last funds into a proven fraudulent account, a disaster that Adana, through her chief of staff, had subtly engineered to bankrupt them fully and legally. The next morning, the local social media circuits exploded, focused not on Lady Ada's shocking identity, but on the humiliating spectacle of the Chima family's greed and attempted theft. They were instantly ostracized by the community they had so desperately tried to impress. Uncle Chima faced minor criminal charges for the assault, and they were forced to hastily sell their compound to cover their debts. Debts that, unbeknownst to them, were bought up by one of Lady Ada's shell companies. The entire family was rendered socially and financially ruined, the ultimate revenge achieved without a single press conference or political involvement. Adana, the girl who was told she smelled like failure, had ascended to a destiny few could have predicted. Not just a wealthy heiress, but a global cultural figure and the undisputed master of her craft. She formally opened the Botanist's Legacy Institute in Lagos, dedicated to training young Nigerians in advanced botanical science and perfumery. She was now the queen of scent, her power emanating not from money, but from her rare, inherited, and cultivated talent. She stood on the balcony of her new property, inhaling the humid Lagos air, now scented with her own exquisite, defiant creation. Her achievement was not just wealth, it was the total erasure of the fear and humiliation her family had inflicted. She had become an institution, a myth, and the sweet, complex aroma of ultimate, scandalous success.